Please rewind this cassette.
Hey guys, Pat here. I'm going to be talking about the newest film from Pixar, Soul, directed by Pete Docter and Kemp Powers. I gotta be honest out of the gate and say this was my favorite release from the studio since Inside Out, also directed by Docter. I think after this movie a good argument could be made that he's the most consistent director of the entire group. Sure, he doesn't jump genres in the same way Brad Bird did with The Incredibles to Ratatouille or Andrew Stanton from Finding Nemo to WALL-E, but this film shares thematic and aesthetic connections that he's been developing for over 20 years. I also think he has the most in common with Miyazaki and the work of Studio Ghibli, with the surrealist and abstract elements of his work. And as a storyteller, I feel like he's the beating heart of the entire Pixar studio. If Inside Out reminded me of My Neighbor Totoro, this movie reminded me of Porco Rosso. So why is this good beyond the fact it's original and not another mediocre sequel cashing in on a once great franchise like Monsters University, Finding Dory, Incredibles 2, Toy Story 4? Well, for one thing, this is a weird movie, while also being one of the most conventional films from him so far. It does feel like a distant cousin to Inside Out, while also reminding me of Monsters, Inc. with how it focuses on the workers of this universe. Docter likes the characters who pull the strings behind some kind of machine, and he usually finds his story and emotional elements in some freak occurrence that dismantles the systems and routines of the everyday workflow. In this movie we follow Joe, a middle school music teacher who has big dreams of becoming a famous jazz pianist. The movie starts with him getting the biggest opportunity of his career, and right before all of his dreams can come true, he dies. This movie then shifts to the afterlife, or the before life. Joe is trying to get back to his body on Earth, but then gets sucked into being a mentor for 22, a soul that hasn't found her spark yet. From there we get the typical Pixar formula. Two characters who are at odds with each other have to develop a friendship that leads to both of them becoming better friends and to a new place of understanding with themselves and their place in the universe. Standout things in this movie, apart from its detailed and creative animation, are the vocal performances from Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey. I think this might be Jamie Foxx's best performance in at least a decade. He's really likable as Joe, and right away you root for this guy with an underlying pathos that builds throughout this story. I would also like to give a special shout out to the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. This is my favorite work they've done together since Social Network. They also did Mank this year, and that was fantastic. I think this score should win the Oscar, and it doesn't sound like anything Pixar has ever done before. The jazz sequences sort of reminded me of La La Land or Whiplash. I actually wish there was more of the jazz elements in this movie. And the scenes with the souls reminded me of the Albert Brooks film Defending Your Life. I was pretty surprised this film took the turn it did with the second act. I wasn't expecting us to go back to Earth and for the Freaky Friday body switch plotline. While this isn't one of the more funny films from Pixar, I do think the middle stretch features the best jokes and character interactions. What really makes this movie work is the emotion behind it, and the sheer ambition of the way it's presented and told. This movie jumps time, plays with existential themes, and has a sort of editing and rhythm to it that felt more like an art film. For instance, there's this terrific sequence at a barber shop where 22 in the body of Joe is just talking about her life and everyone is listening, and then you find out that the relationships that Joe thought he had with his people aren't that, and that he wasn't really trying to listen and understand them, but he can see that now through 22. The best example of this is a montage late into the movie, which is one of the best scenes in Pixar history. It reminded me of the first 6 minutes of Up. There's no dialogue, but the images and music are so powerful that it communicates everything the movie is about. I loved this sequence, and for me it elevates the whole movie. Outside of that though, I'm not sure if all of the internal logic and plotting of this movie makes sense. There were things that happened to seem to contradict elements from the first act of the movie, and the message keeps changing. At first, I thought it was going in the direction of Joe giving up his dreams as a musician and embracing his path as a teacher. That's why I thought the mentor thing was so important. Then I thought, okay, this is about Joe accepting his fate and choosing to face the great beyond that he's been running from throughout the entire movie. But by the end, I feel like this movie is saying a few different things, but I'm not exactly sure if all of it meshes into something coherent. And I really didn't like the very, very end of the movie. To me, it was a bit safe after the movie hinted at something more complex and challenging. While I appreciate it for its ambitious narrative and construction, I also think that's what holds it back from being truly great. There's something off about how it tries to have it both ways. It never goes full 2001 on you, and yet it never really stays on one path to its final destination. I just kept wanting the filmmakers to break out of the convention and really go somewhere with this premise. But in the end, it felt a little bit more cliche than the best scenes hinted at. This isn't to say that I disliked Soul, because I really like this movie a lot and I think it's one of the best films of 2020. What I am saying is that while this is the best Pixar film in years, it's also lacking that sort of magic that makes the best ones true classics. However, the score, the ambition, voice acting, and pacing of the story are excellent and make up for most of its flaws, and it's a highly rewatchable film. It's high-end, mid-tier Pixar. This is a powerful story about life and death, why we're here, and what drives us to do the things that we do. Can we be happy with a lesser life than what we expected? Is everything about us predetermined before birth? Do people really have agency? All of that stuff is fascinating, and the emotional highs of the film show the power of Doctor's subtle storytelling abilities. One final thing before I end this review. This was the first film since Palm Springs that really worked for me watching it at home during the pandemic. I would have liked to have seen this in the theater, don't get me wrong, but it worked perfectly well in my living room. There's something about seeing these intimate and yet large in scope films at home that's really comforting. I hope this is a positive sign of the future with streaming. So I'm going to give Soul an 8 out of 10, and I would highly recommend that you watch it with people that you love. Thanks for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and look out for new episodes of the Beef Stew podcast. I'll see you guys next time.